afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Business and Brews here on the one and the only Rum Boys Fantasy Network. This show brought to you by the SportsMe app. Make sure that you download the SportsMe app. 30-second quick click content. You can ask for fantasy advice. You can debate your favorite fantasy analyst. We're going to be trying to get this app into the hands of everyone and across the whole entire sports industry from NFL, MLB, NBA. So make sure you guys go ahead and download the SportsMe app. Link in the bio. This show is also brought to you by MonkeyKnifeFight.com. What the? Monkey Knife Fight, promo code RUMBOYS. Once again, that is promo code RUMBOYS. Make sure that you download the Monkey Knife Fight app. If you're into daily fantasy prop action, this is your go-to spot. NBA Finals are underway. We got baseball action going down with the home run derby. And guess what? NFL is just around the corner. So make sure you guys get up with promo code RUMBOYS on Monkey Knife Fight. Today's guest is a true legend in the fantasy football space. This man has been doing it for like 10, 12 plus years. I can only imagine to achieve this longevity. Ladies and gentlemen, you all know him. Mr. Black Book himself, Joe Pisapia.
Oh, that is an intro. Let me tell you, I am moved. That is nice right there. I like this. Who needs a hype man? Man, I got you. I just could take you everywhere from now on, Robbie. Thanks for having me on the show, man. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm wondering when Bruce Buffer is going to hit me with the copyright at some point, but until then, I'm just rolling with it. You know?
So keep going until that happens. Just keep on going. Don't listen to the noise, baby. Fade the noise. That's what they say, right? So go over and get it, man. That's great, man. Very nice. Like I said, very nice intro. And yeah, it makes me feel like a veteran when you say the 10 plus. And so, it's more like that. We're getting closer to the 15 nowadays, but I'm just as excited as ever for football season. So I'm ready to go, baby.
Well, I mean, you are a veteran in the game. It's a pleasure to be able to sit back, interview you, and honestly learn it, and use this hour to maybe gain some mentorship. So I appreciate you taking out the time and showing some love to a young G like myself. We're gonna dive right in. Like I said, thank you for coming on the show. You're a legend in your own right. For the people that don't know, we have a lot of new fantasy football players coming in the industry or new content creators. Where did your journey begin? So, like for the kid that's playing DFS right now and eating ramen in his dorm, and he's wanting to know from Joe, like, where did it all start?
I can honestly tell you, for me, it all started back as a kid, like collecting baseball cards and stuff. And I was, obsessed always with sports and stuff. And I think for me, the thing I used to do is I came up with this game, right, where, you get the dice and these pieces, and you had teams, and you could like roll the dice. It would be like a single, double, all these things. I used to do this, plays with my dad, plays with my friends, right? And then we used to do drafts, like with the baseball cards and the players. And I think, as a frustrated Mets fan, as a kid, I think I always wanted to just make the Mets better at times. So I think that's what it was. And then I think that was my first taste of like what fantasy sports might be. And then as I got into college, I started to get into fantasy sports and, baseball into football. And then eventually kind of took me into a path where down the road I started writing for a couple sites. That didn't really work out. Was doing a podcast with my good friend Dan Strafford, and I said, you know what? Enough with this stuff where I'm writing for other people and working for other people. I'm going to work for me. And I put out the first Black Book, and that was 10 plus years ago. And I thought maybe we'll sell like 50 copies. That'd be cool. But it was basically that relative position value system, right? That RPV, which is a really unique way of looking at things and very helpful and useful and applicable. And it just went way bigger than I thought it would. And then people said, you can do another one next year? And I said, yeah. And then expanded over the different sports. And here we are, last couple of years. In August, we've been the #1 football book on Amazon. Not just like fantasy sports, but football. Like ahead of Nick Foles' book, ahead of Tom Brady for a couple weeks. I never thought I would ever see my name and Tom Brady's name next to each other, unless I was like stalking him or something like that, like some kind of restraining order, like do not come within, X number of feet of Tom Brady. But that's where the ride's been, and we got a whole staff of people working there with us now, and it's just it's been a magical ride. It turned into radio at SiriusXM, it turned into TV at SportsGrid, and now Fantasy Pros this year too, which has been a great landing spot. I'm very happy being the lead host there now.
Yeah, I was about to say, getting into Fantasy Pros. I mean, that's huge, because they are like the Fantasy Pros. That is the ranking of rankings. Like that is the cheat sheet that everyone walks in. They print it all off their computers. They walk into the freaking Hooters or Buffalo Wild Wings, and they're like holding their cheat sheets, and then there's me like just knows everything on the top of my head. I'm just like,
That's the real winner right there. The one who just has it all stored in here and just like it's like that Zach Galifianakis gif, where he just sees all the numbers and all that. That's you and me. You just kind of just drift away there.
Exactly. Just let it happen. We've done this a million times. It's dope. It's fun. And then when your friends see you do it, there's like, look at this podcaster. Look, you think you're an analyst? Yeah.
Well, the worst part is though, and you'll probably understand this too. Like now they start following your stuff, right? Your friends, and they follow your content, and well, if he's in on it, then I'm going to be in on that guy too. It gets a little difficult there. Let me tell you, it's no easy trip anymore in any draft.
And I literally was on air, been going hitting the circuit, for Scott Fishbowl week, and I was on air like I did 3 pods yesterday, and my division ended up tuning into those pods, and I was like, I got Tannehill and Kirk Cousins. I'm going to go and tell y'all exactly what I'm going to do because you're still not going to beat me. And they're like, oh, really? One of the dudes went back and watched like 5 different episodes of mine. So then like Justin Jefferson comes off the board because they knew I was going to go for that stack. AJ Brown comes off the board. They're like, oh, we already know that you're going to do that. Oh, you're a Terry McLaurin truther? We're going to pull him too. I was like, oh. It hurt.
It's tough to be famous now. This is what you got to deal with, baby.
I wouldn't say I'm famous yet. I'm still trying to get there. I'm still trying to get there. But no, I love it. And I love what you guys are doing over at Fantasy Pros. You guys are industry leaders, and thank you for that. Honestly, thank you, man.
I appreciate you listening and watching the shows, man. We're trying to. Really take it to another level this year too. We've done a lot of shows in the time where people didn't really do a lot of shows. So there's a lot of great backlog content where we're going through every single division, picking it apart, talking about the offenses, going through stuff. And I think that's been great. We've been doing the mock draft shows last couple of weeks, trying to help people really get prepared and start because, Scott Fishbowl definitely feels like that beginning, right? That's the thing. Like if you're into this and you like eat, sleep and drink and breathe this, Scott Fishbowl is kind of like that first moment where you go, okay, the season's kind of beginning now. And the best thing about Scott Fishbowl is it's a completely level playing field because nobody has the answers. Nobody. People ask me questions about it. I'm like, look, this is what I would do, but I'm telling you right now, it's a complete crapshoot. Just go have fun. Like, just literally go have fun. Get your ideas. Try to figure out what you think is going to make this work and do your best. I've made the playoffs a few times in it, but it is, I believe it's like your first year or last in that. Like, you either just go for it, because it's thousands of people. So you might as well just give it a shot and see how it goes,
Absolutely. By the way, I like what you said earlier about like the baseball cards and like the trading cards because that's how I ended up getting into it. The amount of cards that I just put in spokes. Like I look at the stats and I'd be like, all right, into the spokes, Dante Culpepper.
Yeah, and I was I was a stat kid too. Like I was always fascinated by the numbers and stuff too. I don't know why, I just always was, and and that trend. And it's funny because I started out as a baseball kid for sure. And then I grew into football a little bit more. But now at this stage of my life, it's weird because I played ball real, seriously and stuff like that and coached. And then by the time, like in the last 5 years, for some reason, football really has grown, I don't know, in my heart more. I think baseball is a different game than it was even 5-6 years ago. And the NFL game has become, I think, greater in the last 5-6 years. I think the way that the league has kind of opened things up, the way the passing game is now, the way the quarterbacks are protected is, and also the way it's presented. It's really just, the NFL does a great job of presenting the product, which I think is terrific. And I like that they're letting some fun back into the league too, which is very cool.
I like that that was like a great segue. Like you just did that for me. We're actually going to, all natural. This is why you've been doing this for so long. We're actually going to get into a little bit of product placement here. Okay. And actually get into a conversation about marketing. I love that you just brought that up about the NFL. Just like the NFL, you do really, really awesome at marketing the Fantasy Black Book. Like when I first learned about the Fantasy Black Book years ago, I was thinking to myself, man, like back in the day, everyone, like the typical guy thing was to have like your little black book, right. Quote unquote, and like have one like for fantasy football. And like that's the first thing that I thought about.
Exactly what we're going for. That's exactly the brand.
I was like, oh, like when I thought about like the marketing scheme, like the campaign, I was like, I'm thinking about like Joe's sitting here, he's like mapping it all out. He's like, oh yeah, this is the spin I'm gonna put on it. Was that the case? Like how did
that was definitely it. Like we were trying to say, well, what's the secret? And that was like actually the hardest thing is to overcome that a little bit because people would find it. They would go, this is great, and I'm never telling anyone about it. And that was hard. I was like, I appreciate that, but I'd like to, put food on the table too. It'd be nice to like sell
Yeah.
some more books. So eventually, like you have to overcome that. But there was definitely a period there, especially on Amazon before it became in Amazon early on, it was only the Kindle. Like that's all you had. You could self-publish. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, all of a sudden they did the paperback version, and that's when it really exploded because people still want. And I'm like that too. I like the book in my hand. It's not a magazine, like it's a book. It's got the paper where you can write notes on it, you can highlight stuff. I make that specifically like that because I want people to be able to do that and have that look and feel. And I also like the way we separate things out. But that was absolutely the impetus. Is like, what is this thing that's gonna be different? This little secret book of numbers that you've got and nobody else has. And at the end, it's gonna give you what you want, right? Like that's what you need. And that was kind of like that little secret black book, that little thing you had to yourself that you knew you could go to this. It was going to be different than all the other stuff going out there. And it's hard. It's hard to keep an independent publication. That's what we are. That's what we've always been. And it's so hard to separate yourself nowadays from the herd because everybody is spoon-fed really good information, really good stats, right on the homepage in front of you, right when you're doing drafts, right when you're doing everything, right? It's all there, the podcast. So how do you differentiate? And you do with something like RPV because it's rankings are good, tiers are better, quantified rankings. How much better is a player than another player in that format at that position? That's what really matters most, and that's a strategy. And I feel like that's the void in the fantasy industry at large. Is there's too much generic player content, not enough real strategy, league to league, format to format, depth to depth content, and that's what we do. That separates. There's NFFC content, there's best ball content, there's auction content, PPR, Superflex. You go to the chapter, boom, there it is. This is what I would do. This is say we should do it. And then you've got all the great analysis in there too. We got the dynasty stuff. We got an entire recap of the draft. Like we're trying to be that like Lord of the Rings thing. Like I always say, the one book to rule them all. Because now everybody's playing in different leagues. Like, how many leagues are you in, right? Like, probably a million different styles and formats, right? So that's what we're trying to do.
And then I literally, it's funny you say that because like this week, like between tomorrow and Friday, like we're giving out spots for all of our fantasy leagues. We're doing our analyst versus analyst leagues. We got our charity leagues, or we're going to be teaching the newbies. So we're going to get like super basic, like here's single QB, like here's traditional, like just full point PPR, like
Yeah.
So like you're right. It's what a time to be alive.
And I'm also all about simple. And I think that's the other thing too. People, especially in baseball too, and we do the baseball book, and we were trying last year to expand to NBA and do a second hockey book, but unfortunately, pandemic kind of changed around all the schedules. But I think with all the deeper stats, it's great in one hand, but it's kind of intimidating for other people on the other hand. They get weighed down, they get bogged down with some of the stats. Like they're great, but again, like, what's that mean in terms of strategy? When should I take this player as opposed to taking this position player? And I think that's what I'm about. Like, it's not overwhelming. It's something that you could pick up and use if you're somebody who's been playing for 20 years, or pick up and you're playing for the first time, and it rings true equally. And I think that is something that's why we do what we do, and that's why I think we do the numbers we do, which is cool.
And one of the things I want to kind of pick apart and dissect. You are what I consider. You are a fantasy author, okay? Mm-hmm. You have fantasy football writers, and then you are an actual author. When you're putting together a full publication, and then you are also independently at that, and then you are pressing, you're pressing the paperback copies. You're having to do all that. That's an investment within itself. But of course, you're going to get the ROI later,
right?
That is so beautiful within itself, but then also so innovative and pioneering. And I want to, kind of. Or in the last segment, we talked about the car guys, the car breakers, how they're making their way.
Right.
I want to point out that there are so many different things, ladies and gentlemen, that you guys are able to do. You can, if you're at the writer level, why not maybe try and maybe push yourself to become an author, and maybe think about a book. And there's so many different ways around it. Marketing is my passion. Marketing around fantasy is one of my passions. Who knows? Maybe I put together, a way to market your podcast.
Maybe I hire you next year. I mean, this is how I've gotten my team over the years. And that's what I mean. I've met people in the industry who I love the energy. I love the passion, things like that. And they match the same kind of passion and energy I have. And that's why they've become that Team Black Book people. And they keep coming back. And I'm very blessed that they keep coming back to do pieces of the book and help me out. Because I used to do this all by myself. Like we're
Yeah.
talking, for baseball, 400 plus player profiles by myself, like in a window of 2.5 months where you have to get it out in time, right? So, it's grown to a place where I have a team and all that stuff, but you're right, we're in a unique spot where I think the best thing you could do is always like try to be an authentic voice. I always say when people ask me like, what's your advice when you start a podcast or things like that, they ask me all the time. And I always say the same thing, which is I remember like the first couple weeks I was on Sirius XM, I was trying to do a show that I thought other people wanted to hear. And then I looked at my partner, I was like, man, screw this. Let's do us. Doing us is what got us here. And we started doing us, doing crazy, stupid things, having fun, talking sports, and it took off from there. And I always tell people, do the show that you want to do, not the show that you think other people want to hear. And that is the same advice for anything else. Like, there's a lot of cookie cutter, vanilla content, a lot of stuff that's the same. And some of that stuff has to be the same.
Yeah.
But there's also ways you could separate yourself. And some of it is your own personality, your own authenticity, what's your spin on it, and all that stuff. And I think and not everybody has that. There's great analysts who are boring to talk to. And then there's, really entertaining people who can't back it up with any knowledge. So it's like, when you can find people that have both, that's a win, in this industry for sure.
It is. And we're actually now about to start getting in. Well, first I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
And then we're going to start getting into some fantasy talk. We're going to get into some analysis, talk a little bit of music too. My brother, I got to ask, how do you juggle breaking down analysis for pretty much all three of the major markets, right? So you're doing MLB, you're doing NFL, and you're doing NBA. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I was, when I started, I was doing play-by-play for all the sports. Mm-hmm. I was, having guys that would write articles, and we're doing the graphics and everything. And it was hard. And now fantasy football is like my baby. That is what I'm known for. I'll still dabble in those things here and there. How do you do it on a consistent basis?
I don't know how anybody really does through well. I do baseball very well. I do football very well. NBA is something I have to cover sometimes for Sports Grid or for, so I have good general working knowledge where I can host and let somebody else be really smart and set them up to be great. But in terms of, the NFL and MLB grind, especially the overlap, it's hard. Like, I'll give you, for instance, in October, when the season ends for baseball, that's when the baseball black book starts getting assembled and put together because it's going to be out before Christmas. Then on the flip side, you're looking at when you're in right now, like I'm covering baseball, doing baseball shows 5 days a week, doing football shows 3 days a week for draft content. So there's a lot going on, but it beats the hell out of working for a living, my friend. So I will take that. I will put in that extra work. I'm the guy up at 6 o'clock in the morning, looking over everything for the night before, looking all the stuff for the show sheet for that day, and the things we're going to do and plan it all out. And I think you end up learning, you learn a process of how to keep everything straight, how to keep everything organized. And I always say also, it takes a lot of effort to look effortless when you're doing this. So, and that's the truth, right? It's a lot of preparation. Nobody sees the preparation. Nobody sees the show sheets. Nobody sees the things that you've worked on, discussed beforehand, gone over, put in there, all these little nuggets and things like that. And then they're just here, and then you can communicate them. But it's the plus and the minus of this technology we talk about, right? Where anybody can get in there and do it, is that anybody can get in there and do it. And it looks easy, but it's not. It's not necessarily the most easy thing to do. There's a lot of work, a lot of preparation. And also, I like meeting new people. I like working with people. I love discussions. I love debates. I love all that. So it's a fun industry with the right mix of people to do all that. So there's lots of opportunity, I think, out there, and I think that the preparation is the key for all that success. Especially if you're gonna do more than one sport, or even just one sport really well. And I cover all the wagering stuff too, and that's a whole other animal, because the betting side of things has really grown. And what's great is when you have the fantasy knowledge, and it does bleed over into a lot of things, whether it be over-unders, whether it be individual player props. The fantasy people out there, now that the gambling stuff has really kind of taken off, that's really, I think, the better fantasy analysts have some good information they can give you on the wagering side, even if they're not, big time, hey, I'm Vegas Joey, and I'm going to give you all these things, like, it's not all that stuff, right? But no offense to Vegas Joey. I'm sure there's a Vegas Joey. Don't at me, somewhere. Vegas Joey. If not, I'm going to create that my new handle, Vegas Joe. But you know what I mean? Like there are those high roller guys and all that stuff, but I think there's also, in the fantasy community, I think there's a lot of people who can give you some good information you can use on not only the fantasy side, but the wagering side too.
Oh, the amount of people that would catch our pregame show before kickoff. We go through all of our monkey knife fight bets, and we go right up until the line close. So we'll do the whole show. We'll do fantasy, and then we're like, all right, now on to our props. And then the amount of people that would DM me after a long hard day of the grind, they'd be like, man, I paid my cell phone bill today, man. My girl was tripping on me, but I was like, you know what? We eating steak tonight. It was all great, So and that's a beautiful feeling. And I'm a big prop guy, So I love the fact that it's like you said, it's grown. See, even where you gotta maybe dabble a little bit. You can do fantasy football, but just know that there are the people out there that have that little betting itch too. So that's another.
It's how we consume the game. If you watch the path of growth in the NFL and the path of fantasy football, they're the same. Yep. Back in the day, nobody would give a crap. Like, if you were a Minnesota Vikings fan, could you care less about the Jaguars, playing the Panthers on one weekend? No, chances are you don't care about that game, but all of a sudden you do now if you have investments in it, whether it be on the wagering side or the fantasy side. All of a sudden that game matters, and that consumption of the NFL along with fantasy, that's again, it's how we watch the games, it's how we take them in now. And it's great, it's fun, and it makes you care a little bit more because you got a little interest in it, but also, there's a little bit now you become a smarter fan, and I think the smarter fan then starts to enjoy the game on a higher level, and I think that education level has gone way up too, where the average fan is not as kind of team centric as they used to be. They understand the whole league, they understand the players, they understand offenses, they know the difference between a nickel and a 3-4 and all this stuff. And back, I would say 20 years ago, maybe it was a little bit more generic in that sense. So the game has really evolved, and I think it's because of fantasy, because of now wagering too as well, kind of becoming so prevalent for us.
Dude, I love it. And it's a beautiful space that we're in now. Now it's like a couple of years ago, when I call it the entrepreneurial boom, when it was cool to all of a sudden be an entrepreneur. Now it's it's cool to be a sports nerd, we had the sports.
It was always cool, Robbie. Don't let anybody tell you different.
It was always cool.
Always cool to hang out with the nerds.
But now it's you can do stats off the top of your head, that's great. So yeah, I don't know. It's a super different world, super different world. So 'tis the season of giving. Let's talk a little Scott Fishbowl, why don't we? We've been dropping it throughout the show. And I know people are like, please give us fantasy analytics. We need it.
Let's go.
How is your draft looking so far? What division are you in? Spot that you're picking from? And then favorite song by the band or artist of which you are.
I had only run with Crest. They gives you could say whatever you wanted and stuff like that. It's I don't need to be with this person or that person. I was they said, what's your favorite band? And I just said, I love the Foo Fighters. So, they put me in the Foo Fighters division, which is very nice. I've seen them live at Madison Square Garden pre-pandemic. It was one of the great rock shows I've ever seen, and that was the number one on my bucket list because I still hadn't seen them yet. And Everlong is my all-time favorite song, so very happy in that division. I hope I represent it well. Let's go. Dave Grohl is my hero. I mean, how cool is Dave Grohl? Dave Grohl broke his leg, stayed out there. He said, tape it up, put it up there, and I'm going to continue to play a concert.
Yep, and still played just amazing.
And continued the tour in the case, and then they built that Game of Thrones throne behind him with all the guitar necks, which is the coolest thing. Instead of swords, that's my dude right there. That's what I'm talking about. That's a rock star.
And he's also, people don't know this about his resume, he is also a director as well.
He does has all a documentary.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Look, guy's just the best, man. He seems like the coolest guy to hang out with too.
Exactly.
So Dave, I know you're watching. If you want to hang out, you just hit me up. It'll be fun. But yeah, I'm in the Foo Fighter division. I got the second pick. I took Josh Allen over Mahomes, and people might wonder why, but it's because I feel like Josh Allen still controls all the scoring in his offense.
Yes.
He's either running the football in, he is throwing the football in, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty, everything is controlled by him. Whereas I think there's room for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to start to grow a bigger role potentially this year. I think it kind of got stunted as the year went on when Le'Veon Bell got there and things got a little weird and jammed up a little bit. And I think Mahomes is going to cruise a little bit in some of those games. Allen, I think, is going to be in a lot of dogfights, and I got Josh Allen and then Scott Fishbowl last year, I think in the 5th round or 6th round, because people didn't want him because of the negatives. And I'm like, for interceptions, I'm like, well, I'll take him every day of the week, man. That's fine.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, Saquon was my first pick, so things didn't work out as well. But Ended up with like a 500-ish record at the end of the day. But in the 2 spot, I took Josh Allen. Came back around for me, and I'm trying to remember Najee Harris, who big fan. And then 3rd round reversal, which I don't like. I don't get it. I know it's been explained to me the reason why it's there. I'm not a fan of it. I don't know who came up with this torture device. But then I couldn't wait. I couldn't let Devontae Adams go anymore. So I took Devontae Adams. Then I took 2 more running backs because I took Montgomery, Etienne, and then I just took Roethlisberger as my second QB. So
Okay.
So I feel like, here's my thing. In this scoring system, I know people go gaga for the tight end stuff, and that's all fine and dandy. That's great. To me, it's like, get that big-time quarterback and then control touchdowns. Like, you want guys that score. To me, that's what Fishbowl is about. When you get that half-point PPR stuff, that's always what it's about for me. It's like, who's controlling the scoring on that team, right? Devontae Adams, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going to play for them. Maybe I'll be wrong about that, but I'll plant my flag there that he's going to whine and cry and then come back and play because he ain't going to play for Vic Fangio. This is not like Tom Brady, as I said last night on the CBS show. This ain't like Tom Brady saying, oh, look, there's fun Uncle Bruce Arians I can go play for. He's going to give me all the toys I want, and I'm going to have so much fun. And it's going to be the anti-Belichick. I can retire in Florida. Why is it going to play Denver for Vic Fangio? Come on, man. That ain't never going to happen. That's some nonsense. But anyway, eventually when he comes back in, I mean, you got Adams, you got Harris, Josh Allen. I think Etienne's going to be tremendous. David Montgomery, you know what? I understand the second half of last year came up against a lot of bad defenses. But you know what? There's a lot of guys that still don't perform when they're supposed to. Give me the guy who's performing. Give me the guy who looked better in the second half. I'm not buying the Tariq Cohen stuff. I'm not buying the Williams stuff.
He works hard.
He does work hard, man. And the quarterback play is immediately better just by getting rid of all the other guys.
Look, I'll give you a little behind the scenes about David Montgomery.
Okay.
So, 2019, I'm at the NFLPA rookie premiere. We had interviewed, 40 rookies out of that class that had gotten selected to go. Panini, all that good stuff. NFLPA, like, flown them out. All that good stuff. We're in the elevator, like pretty much like our pretty much last night of being in Hollywood. Me, Cole, AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, and David Montgomery and Devin Singletary are all in the elevator with me and my former co-host at the time. They're like, hey, you guys killed it with our interviews. If you guys want to go ahead, if you guys want to come out with us, you can meet us at the Playhouse on West Hollywood. We're about to be in the lobby. Meet us down there like in a couple minutes. We're like, all right, bet. Ty, my former co-host at the time, he turns and he looks at David and he's like, hey, Monty, like, I'm a huge Bears fan. Like, are you going to be out with the fellas? He was like, no. He was like, I'm probably going to chill in my room and work out. I shit you not, Joe. At 2:30 in the morning, we are walking through the Beverly Hills Hilton, okay? Like, this is the same.
I know the building.
Yeah. David Montgomery is in the gym. Just arms huge, swole as hell. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what in the world? Like, we're walking through, and I'm like, what is going on?
And there's a window. And I think it's great that a guy like David Montgomery understands there's a window, especially at that position. Not only is there a window in the NFL, but there's a window at that position. And look, it's also that separated when you get to that level, everybody's talented. It's like, it becomes about work ethic. Tom Brady is not the most talented quarterback that ever played the position.
Wait, no.
Not even close. But he is the best quarterback to ever play the position. And There's a difference between those things. And look, that's an argument people want to have, and I'm happy to have it.
hey, that's our version of the MJ, Kobe, LeBron stuff. That is our. You're right.
Well, I'll take the MJ side every day. So because I remember watching that guy and everybody else, and I've seen, and that guy played defense. Yeah. But I think that's the difference. And going back to Montgomery in that situation too. Andy Dalton is a serviceable NFL quarterback. He always has been. Yeah. And eventually, when Fields does take over, I mean, you're just in a good position. And I'm not saying Montgomery is, an RB1, but I'm saying I think Montgomery's getting a lot of negativity. It's funny. It reminds me a lot about the negativity that everybody heaped 2 years ago on A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was too efficient. All he was efficient. All he did was catch the ball and catch touchdowns, and he didn't have a lot of opportunities. And I said, well, what did he do with the opportunities he had? Oh, all he did was catch the football and score a touchdown? Oh, that sounds interesting to me. That sounds great. So you're telling me that in year 2, maybe that gets better? And now everybody's going to be like, says the
What?
Julio Jones thing, which is, well,
Yep.
Julio's there, so that's going to hurt him. Really? Learning from a Hall of Fame wide receiver on the other end of you, having now everybody on single coverage is going to hurt A.J. Brown? I do not think so.
No,
I think
no.
that's craziness. And Tannehill's played very well. The reason why they've been a run-first offense is because they got the greatest running back right now in football. They got a horse there with Derrick Henry.
And people
So you
still
can't be-
rag on Henry. People still be
Oh,
like,
my
he's not
God.
PPR
Man.
efficient. I'm like, man, you know how many
PPR yards are
catches I
yards.
have?
Last time I checked, yards are yards. And I understand the concern, and the numbers do bear out that guys who have huge workloads a couple years in a row, they start to fade.
Yep.
But he hasn't had the same. He didn't have the same workload this beginning of his career. That workload was very light in the first year and a half of his career, and no one else is also physically like him. He is physically a marvel, and I also think he's a very smart runner. Although there's contact, Derrick Henry doesn't get enough credit sometimes for his intelligence of running, which I think is underrated, where he will make the contact when he has to. And there's other times where he'll go out of bounds and he doesn't know, there's just no way I'm doing this, and I'm going to, not try to be Earl Campbell all the time. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost. And now all of a sudden you got Julio, you got A.J. Brown, you got Derrick Henry, you got a capable quarterback. Man, like that tennis and a mediocre at best defense, that's a beautiful combination of fantasy. Give me all the Titans this year I can handle, let me tell you.
Dude, can we just agree that the Tennessee Titans are the team that in fantasy people are just like, like Tannehill's and this person's and then like there's all these stats that prove that they're actually pretty good, like for fantasy purposes.
And they're and Derrick Henry with the PPR thing too. It's like, how do all those that last year the first round was a mash unit, right? Like everybody got hurt, right? Devontae Adams, like the one guy I feel like who didn't get hurt, and Derrick Henry, right? That's it. Derrick Henry was that one guy that you just plugged and played like the whole season, and I think that
got championships.
Yeah, and I think that it is a different OC, and I think when you have Julio too. Let's not forget Corey Davis caught a lot of balls and a lot of big catches there, and now you're adding Julio into this mix. It's gonna be a really fun team to watch.
Firster's now starting to get involved. Firster's starting to get involved. Like he could be a late round redraft tight end. You could even probably if you were punting tight end and Scott.
They don't get enough credit. I think you nailed it. I just don't think they get enough credit for how good they could be.
Dude, hey, I'm rocking a Derrick Henry, Tannehill stack in SFB 11. Then I got Cousins and Thielen. Followed by who did I just pick? He has Godwin winning his name, Chris Godwin. And I'm hoping, maybe I go I'm thinking like head against the 6th round, maybe I go Bob Tonyan. I just love the way it's something about the way they
I love that you call him Bob, like you guys are close.
Yeah, right.
I love that. That's one Bob to another, right?
Dude, I have a nickname for like every single player in the NFL. Josh Allen's Vanilla Vic. Robbie Anderson's a string bean.
Oh my God. I'm totally going to give you credit for that, but I'm going to use that all the time. Oh, it's so good.
Bro. Oh gosh, I love this comment right here. Disappointed Robbie didn't go Joe Mixon in SFB. You know for 4 years on air, I have never been a Joe Mixon truther. You're just typing that just to type that. Oh my God.
That's a tough one though. Joe Mixon is a sink or swim, man. And I've defended him in the past, and then last year I was very frustrated because I had shares and I loved him and Burrow together. I love that they made an investment in him. And ironically, it was the investment that the team made in him that kept him off the field because there was no reason to bring him back. Or he could have played in December, but there was just no reason. Why would you do that? So it was kind of frustrating, but this is it here for him because he's had great moments and he's had a lot of injuries. So this is really it for him. Like I feel like this is kind of the fork in the road for him. So if you get him at a good value, I'm all for it. As a 2, that's cool. As a 1, I don't know how I feel about that.
And even still as a 2, like I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again now that you're here, Joe. I don't know if you've heard my Joe Mixon theory. If Joe Mixon just so may happen to fall to you to where it's like, all right, you know what? It's irresistible for me to grab him. I'm going to grab him. Go ahead and right after, especially in live draft scenarios, look over at your best friend or even the Bengals fan that is in your draft, especially the Bengals fan that's in your draft, and you say, hey, let's head to the bar. I'm going to buy you your favorite shot. I'm going to buy your favorite drink, and let's have this conversation. And then, you sell them Joe Mixon right there on the spot. And then you come back with an upgrade. Mm-hmm. I have done Joe Mixon for who did I do? Who did I get Joe Mixon for? I had traded Joe Mixon for a Chris Carson last year, and it worked out 10 times better.
It's funny. Like that's the dude that I would rather have as safer. I think Chris Carson is maybe he doesn't have the ceiling. No. But you know what? Like I like what Chris Carson does. I like what they know what his role in the offense is. He knows what his role in the offense. I like that he started catching more balls last year too. A lot of people don't realize that. He had the same number of catches in less games than he did the year over year. So he was starting to get a little bit more action in the passing game there too. And I don't know. I mean, I know they're talking about Rashad Penny being part of this. Like, I don't know.
No, that's never happening. That's never happening.
Sometimes this is that time of year where they try to sell you on a lot of stuff too, where you're just like, I don't know about that, man.
Hey, that coach speak, that Jamal Williams gonna be our RB1.
Well, let me tell you, Jamal Williams is a guy to keep an eye on, and I'm putting some draft equity in him because
you should, yes.
DeAndre Swift's concussion issues last year are troubling. Whenever you have a young player who has concussion, who's had a significant concussion already, especially at that kind of position at running back, that's a little bit of a danger because if he suffers another one, that could be multiple weeks just to go through protocols. You know what I mean? And Williams has already kind of, shown that he can carry some workload.
Yes.
He gave Aaron Jones a good run for his money a couple of years ago, and he was useful in the red zone for the Packers. So Williams, Henderson, Gus Edwards. There's a lot of those later running backs that I would circle and put on your bench because I think they all have 5 to 10 carries a game in them, but then they all have significant upside if there's an injury to the guy in front of them. And I think those are the three in particular for me that stand out.
It's funny that you say that because Jamal Williams has been a guy that I've actually advocated for over the last couple of seasons. When the coach speaking in Detroit came out about him being, possibly the guy, I immediately was like, let's look to try and, upgrade here. I packaged Jamal Williams, Baker Mayfield, and OBJ to bring back Cam Akers in Dynasty. And I'm willing to even, maybe utilize Williams as that in redraft, but I'm even thinking in redraft purposes, do what I've always traditionally done, and I just keep him on my bench because I know that he's going to step in. I know that he's going to get me, 14 points here and there per week, So I like what you just said about Williams because people aren't thinking about that. Preseason begins August 5th. What is one fantasy football hot take that you're planting your flag on, and one NFL regular season hot take? And if you want to make it like a week one thing, you can, but what's one regular NFL, so for all the regular fans out there, that don't play fantasy, what's the hot take that you got there too?
Well, I already gave you Aaron Rodgers one, so that's a bonus. That and I don't even know that's not a hot take or anything. That's just truth. So I'm not even going to consider that. Mine for me, and it's probably more of an NFL one, but it's going to have a fantasy impact, is I do believe, and I've been saying it, that I think Mac Jones has more of a chance to start the season as the quarterback than other people might think. And Cam Newton last year was terrible. And Cam Newton historically has not been a good passer. And Cam Newton historically has not been, I don't think, a great leader. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at the first round investment they made in the quarterback and the style of offense that the Patriots have been known to play, which is about execution. It's about timing. It's not necessarily about great arm strength. It's not necessarily about great leg strength or anything else. It's just about getting the football out in the right person, the right time, and being efficient. And that's something that Mac Jones can do, especially behind a good offensive line, which is what he's going to have with the Patriots. So how many first-round quarterbacks taken in the top 15 picks have we not seen the first year play?
Yeah.
Not many. So, and people say, well, what about the money they're paying Cam Newton? That's a luxury. They had money and they had so much cap space this year. They could afford to just pay Cam Newton as an insurance policy. But I would watch that preseason very carefully. I think that's something that it would not shock me if they came out of the gate and said, you know what, we're just turning the page now. Especially because they have such a late bye. It's not like they have a week 4 bye or something like that where they could give them a couple weeks again. Like their bye is like, I don't know, week 13 or something ludicrous like that, right? So that's never going to happen. In terms of fantasy, I think Travis Etienne is going to be a lockdown PPR RB2. And here's why. James Robinson did a wonderful job last year. And I love the story of James Robinson. And you have to keep in mind he is an undrafted free agent from a previous coaching regime. I don't know how much equity that flies in the clubhouse with Urban Meyer or anybody else. You could like him, you could respect him, you can be grateful for what he did. But the guy that Trevor Lawrence played with was Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
You're going to have that rookie transition into the National Football League. I'm pretty sure he's going to want that guy behind him because he has a rapport with him. He has timing with him. He has confidence in him. That stuff doesn't grow on trees. And Trevor Lawrence is going to run this organization. So to me, although you might see James Robinson the first 6 weeks, maybe, vulture some touchdowns, some goal line work, some things like that, I think as the season goes on, much like we saw Taylor over time, much like we saw Montgomery last year, and even Swift to a certain degree, as the season went on, these guys get stronger and stronger. Travis Etienne's a guy that I want to be patient with. I want to make sure I'm drafting. And I'm trying to get, and look, I always practice what I preach, right? Even in last night's mock draft, I tried to get him.
Yep.
To me, that's a player that you're always looking for the guys who can jump, right? Like CeeDee Lamb, I think, can jump from a wide receiver 2 to a 1.
That's what I've been saying.
Right. There's guys who can jump from 3s to 2s. There's guys in the running back category that you can draft as almost an RB3, and they can possibly be the top end RB2, especially in PPR, because I do think he's going to work out quite a bit. And I know they got some talent there. I know everyone's excited about Chenault, and I like DJ Shark as much as anybody, and Marvin Jones is a great veteran, but Travis Etienne, I think that's a guy that, could be really good right out of the gate, especially because of the circumstance, because it's him and Lawrence together, and I think that goes a lot longer way than many other people might realize.
I like it.
Because that's real football. Like that's like it's not like us trying to write a narrative. That's just a fact. Like everything I just gave you is just a fact of life in the NFL. Like this is the young franchise quarterback, and you get to tell him, no, we want this undrafted free agent guy to play running back. Well, he's like, no, I want my guy. Why do you think they drafted him where they did? You know what I mean? It's the same reason why Joe Burrow got to pick Jamar Chase instead of taking
exactly what I was about to go into.
Right? Yeah. Right? It's the same reasoning there. So it matters. And anyone who thinks it doesn't isn't paying attention.
Yep. So my regular season take, I'm gonna go with 2. Okay. Joe Burrow, he's gonna be healthy 100% this year. He's gonna be perfectly fine. They brought in Chase. You got T Higgins, and we already saw what their connection started developing and looking like. Tyler Boyd has always been serviceable. Mm-hmm. This team, aside from the defense, this offense is going to put up a lot.
Oh, the defense is perfect. That's exactly what you want. They're terrible.
Just
sign me up. All the Bengals. Let's go.
Joe Burrow is going to go on an aerial attack. This man is possibly going to throw for like 4 to 5K. Like I'm telling you, and I'm going to love it. I'm going to love every bit of it. Another take that I have, I do live here in Colorado Springs. I got to shout out the homie Pat Fitzmaurice because he got the gears turning on this one. Mm-hmm. And also shouts you brought up the mock draft last night. Shouts to the CBS crew as well over there, Heath and all those guys. So many people in the industry. I've gotten to meet all you guys. But nah, what I'm gonna say is here for the Denver Broncos, that defense is not prominent enough and not skilled enough right now, and not healthy enough right now to create the opportunities that we are expecting in fantasy football from Javonte Williams or either Melvin Gordon, whatever side of the coin you want to go, to where either of those running backs are probably going to be fantasy proficient as we may think. I think that defense holds this team back, no matter how great of a defensive-minded coach Vic Fangio is. I don't think that defense is going to be able to go out there and put things together. If you want to ride the narrative of, Von Miller hasn't really, been healthy. Bradley Chubb hasn't really been healthy. Von Miller is also doing some off the field things. I think as long as that defense is not, it doesn't seem like that they are a team, that they're a unit. And I think that affects the offensive side, and that's why I'm out on Denver.
That's gonna be a fascinating team to see if Bridgewater can get more out of that offense. And the last thing too, just because we're coming full circle with this Aaron Rodgers thing. So you're telling me Aaron Rodgers wants to go and then play in a division where he has to look at Patrick Mahomes twice a year? Like what?
No.
Stop. I mean, stop. He's either going to play or he's not. He's not going to go anywhere else to play because there's no other place for him to be. In my opinion.
Unless he forces his way to San Francisco some magical way.
That doesn't happen. They just drafted Trey Lance. No way.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
The secret to winning in this league is great young quarterback play like Kyler Murray, like Trey Lance, where you're not paying the quarterback all of that money and you can spread it out around the team and create a really solid base around. Why do you think the Buffalo Bills are in the playoffs, right? Look at all the playoff teams. What do they have in common? The Ravens, the Bills, Kyler Murray, right? Young QBs, right? Young QBs who are playing at the top of their game. It's the reason why the Seahawks were able to have that great run early on with Russell Wilson, right? They were paying him nothing, right? You could afford to pay everybody in the Legion of Boom. Right?
The young guard is taking over. Like our years, like Brady is like the last of like his like breed. Rodgers is the last of his breed. We're kind of done with that era. Like this is a whole new game that we're going to be witnessing over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
It is, and it's a good one. It's a really good one too.
Oh yes. Well, again, Joe, you are a legend. Thank you for coming on the show today. What is just one parting piece of advice that you have for fantasy players
Mm-hmm.
or content creators, whichever direction you want to go with it, or whatever you want to talk about here? And then
Sure,
also,
man.
where can people find your work?
Well, of course, you can always follow me on the Twitter machine at Joe Pisapia 17. I'm always there. You can check out the new Fantasy Football Black Book 2021 over on Amazon. It's on iTunes as well, on the Apple Store now, whatever the hell it's called. So if you prefer the Apple devices, but you can get the paperback on Amazon, which is cool. And of course, you can check out all the Fantasy Pros content. I'm there hosting all of the shows every day there. We're doing some great work over Fantasy Pros. Very excited. It's a phenomenal team of people. We have a great time, but we work really hard. It's a great place to be. And of course, on Sports Grid TV every Sunday, hosting the NFL pregame show and the Major League Baseball show there too. But again, my advice, do the show that you want to hear, not the show you think other people want to hear. And when it comes to drafting and all that stuff, and my best advice for everybody is you can be two things: be prepared and be flexible. If you can do those two things, then every draft is yours. You have to understand you can have a plan, but as soon as the draft starts to unfold, that plan has to change, and you have to be able to kind of maneuver around things a little bit and see where the value is. And that's why something like RPV in the Black Book is so useful, because it teaches you where to look for the value and understand it. And once you start to ingrain yourself in that process, understanding where the positive players are at that position, the negative players are, why would you waste a draft pick trying to take a player that doesn't move the needle? Create core roster strength. Don't worry about filling roster spots. Roster spots will all get filled. Get core roster strength. Be great somewhere. That's what you want to do. You only get one shot a week to be good. Make sure you're getting guys that can win you weeks. And some of those guys nowadays are those elite QBs. So get past this whole late QB thing, because, as you said, Robbie, it's a different world.
Hey, we were talking. I like what you just did there. We were talking. Some pretty heavy hip hop legends earlier. You only get one shot, one opportunity. You went like I like what you just did there. That was nice.
That's right. One shot, baby. That's all you get. Although I'm probably more at my heart, I'm much more of a Tribe Called Quest guy than an Eminem guy for sure. I just got to be real.
Gosh, I'm so bumping some Tribe today. I did go ahead for everyone in the chat today. I went ahead and dropped the link to the Fantasy Football Black Book. My recommendation is honestly it's really only like a $5 difference between the paperback and the Kindle price. Not even like a full $5, because it's like $14.63. So yeah,
and we also do the updates too, which is cool. So if you purchase the paperback on page 3, you could do the RPV updates. So for one time for $5, every time I update the RPV numbers, the cheat sheets get sent to you automatically.
There we go.
You become on that list. That way, that's the other thing too. People say, well, that stuff's outdated and stuff. No, not the Black Book, because we got a way to keep you updated all the time. So if there is an injury, if there is a change, if there is a move by an organization that matters in terms of relative position value, and something changes, once you subscribe to that, and we do them through July, we do them through August, all the way up until the first week of the season, that last draft weekend. So we try to give everybody the best thing they can arm themselves with when they go into the draft with the cheat sheet. So that's another separator difference between us and the stuff you buy at the grocery store.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys go pick up your fantasy football Black Book by Joe Pisapia. He is not just a fantasy. He's a fantasy writer and he is a fantasy analyst, but he is also a fantasy author. The first that we have ever interviewed here on Business and Brews. I thank you all for tuning in. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, download the SportsMe app and Monkey Knife Fight. Promo code RUMBOYS. That's RUMBOYS spelled with a Z. We love and appreciate every single one of you. And look out for more from the network and more from Joe. Peace.